My name is Andrew, and I have a YouTube channel where I do urban explorations. In the beginning, I did horror explorations, going into caves or supposedly possessed places, but since I never saw anything, I felt that the content of my channel had to mature. So I moved away from the horror theme and started making videos of explorations in forests or mountains. I never imagined that in one of them I was going to have the worst moment of my life. That day I was camping in a forest. I had set up my tent and had prepared myself for a few days. I knew that there were no dangerous animals or anything like that in the area, so I could leave the tent open while I explored. I walked around the forest for the first few laps. It was an ordinary forest and nothing in it caught my attention until I saw something that immediately interested me. I approached a leafless tree and found a piece of paper stuck on it. That paper was a poster of a missing teenager. I stared at it in surprise, not understanding how it had gotten there. When I raised my head, I opened my eyes wide, impressed by what I was seeing. This part of the forest was full of posters of missing persons stuck in the trees, and all of the posters were different. At that moment, I realized something terrifying. What if these are more than just missing person posters, but they are a trophy for whoever made them disappear? I didn't know what was going on, but there was one thing for sure. I didn't have to be there. Turning to leave, I saw a camp in the distance, and from it, a tall man was waving at me from a distance. I ran back to my tent and gathered all my things to leave. I came out from inside the tent to get the last things out, and when I did, all the stuff fell out of my hand. In front of me, on a small log I had placed to sit on, there was a poster of a missing teenager. I gathered all my stuff from the floor and put it in my backpack. I grabbed my scout knife and crouched against the tent, looking for the one I knew was stalking me. All the leaves in the forest were moving, and I heard many noises behind them. Someone was moving and was running back and forth. I was at a complete disadvantage, exposed out in the open, while a psychopath surrounded me, ready to attack me at any moment. I closed the tent so no one could hide behind it and began considering my chances. I had to get to my car, which was on the other side of the road, but it was pretty far away. How would I get there? I heard noises behind me and took advantage of the situation. I had to run ahead in the direction of my car. When whatever was behind me came out of its hiding place, it was a deer. I took a deep breath as I watched the noble creature come out of the plants, but a second later, a person jumped out from behind it and knocked it to the ground. The deer tried to run away, but it was too late. That person was biting its neck. I froze, watching the man devouring the poor animal alive, who was screaming in pain and confusion. He suddenly stopped attacking the deer, and his eyes met mine again. The psycho just looked at me and, as before, waved. Then he bit the dead animal's neck again. At that moment, I could only run. I ran as fast as I could until I reached my car. When I did, I accelerated without looking back until I got back to civilization. After I called the police, they searched the area but found nothing. Not the posters, the tent, or the dead animal. That forest was empty. I still go on explorations today, but I always do them with friends. I would never dare to go back to a forest alone. Have you ever heard the saying, "Curiosity killed the cat"? I must admit that that saying is a great truth, but not entirely correct. You see, there was a time when I was the cat, but luckily I survived to tell the tale. It all started one day when I was camping with my friends. Every summer we went fishing, but this one was particularly different because after we did, we took a detour to see the mountains. It was a fun vacation, although something had caught my attention, and I couldn't get it out of my head. As we came, I saw a black car ahead of us. This car's behavior was erratic, as if the direction and speed of the car would change depending on our movements. My friends thought it was strange too, but they decided to ignore it, look for simpler explanations, and in a matter of minutes, they forgot what had happened. At first, I forgot about it too, and we spent the whole day camping. A few hours later, when the sun was setting, we were all going home. At that moment, I saw the car from before hidden near us. None of my friends seemed to notice this, and I decided not to tell them, as I was sure they would downplay it and call me paranoid. You know, I am a horror writer, and I must admit that I have a great appetite for the occult, the bizarre, and the mysterious. That decision I made was not a really smart one. I won't deny it, but I had to do it. Halfway down the road back home, I let my friends pass me with their cars, and I decided to turn around and try to see what the black car was doing. When I went back to where I had seen it, I noticed that the car was gone. I parked my car nearby, and luckily I found it. The car was now in the camping area where we were, much more out in the open. I parked my car in a spot I thought was well hidden, turned off the lights, and stayed inside, watching for anything to happen. No one was getting out of the car. Seconds, minutes, and hours passed, and nothing happened. Then, at one point, everything happened. Suddenly, many cars arrived, and men in black robes surrounded the place. I got out of the car, closed the door, and walked a few meters to a place where I could take good pictures with my cell phone. The men made a bonfire in the center of the field and began surrounding it. Then a black car opened and a girl got out with something in her hand. I zoomed in on whatever she was carrying. I gasped when I realized that she was holding a dead chicken, which she threw into the middle of the campfire while everyone was dancing around it. I had some pictures that no photographer would have ever dared to get in their lives. I was thrilled, but also really scared. That was enough for me. I returned to the car to leave the place as soon as possible, but as I was about to get in, something caught my attention. The car door, wasn't fully closed. It was just propped up. That was impossible. I'm a very organized man. I always close the door when I get out of the car. I even remember closing it when I got out. How could it be open? Suddenly, I had a very bad feeling, and I walked away from my car slowly, walking backward. At that moment, I realized what was happening. A face, a terrifying, pale face, was staring at me from inside my own car. What was worse, I could see more shadows inside. Several people were hiding there. I ran down the road away from that horrible place, but also away from my car. How far was the nearest town? 20 miles? 30 miles? It didn't matter. I had to get away as soon as possible. Suddenly, some lights came on behind me, and a car was coming at high speed down the road. It was my car. I jumped out of the way into the middle of the road, dodging my own car, which had tried to run me over. Far from being satisfied with the attempted homicide, the car turned around and tried to run me over again at full speed. I managed to dodge it again by jumping to the side of the road, but that same jump caused me to fall downhill into the woods and hurt my ankle very badly. In pain, I tried to walk as far as I could, but I started to hear footsteps near me. I hid behind a tree and prayed that no one would find me. I didn't even dare to see whose footsteps they were. Maybe they were good people. Maybe they were civilians. Or maybe they were the ones who tried to kill me. I didn't want to find out. I just closed my eyes and cried, praying and begging that no one would find me. After a few minutes that seemed like hours, the footsteps were gone. I slowly walked, wounded, to a village, and there I knew the nightmare was over. I reported everything to the police. When they went to investigate, there was nothing left of my car. Those guys had set it on fire to hide any trace that they were there. When I told my friends, they were shocked. I never went back to that place. If those psychopaths want to keep doing their rituals in the forest, that's fine, but they won't hurt me or my friends. Hey guys, my name is Alan. I'm an average person. I don't consider myself an adventurer or a particularly brave person. Maybe that's why I wasn't prepared for that night, but I don't think anyone in my position would have been. It all started one night at camp with Randy, my best friend. We used to be Boy Scouts, so sometimes we had these trips. We were about to park, but as I looked out the window, I saw many police cars passing me. They seemed to be in a hurry, as if looking for someone. We decided to ignore them and continue on our way. When we went down to camp, made the campfire, and took the food out of our backpacks, we were about to start eating, but Randy had a strong urge to pee, so he went into the darkness. Seconds passed and Randy didn't come back. At first, I thought it was funny. He must have been holding it in for quite a while. But as the 10 minutes passed, I started to get worried. I asked him if he was there, but Randy didn't answer. Maybe he ran into a wild animal, tripped and hurt himself on the road. I had to go help him. I grabbed my flashlight and went down to look for my friend. I screamed his name in desperation, and in response, I finally heard a voice, but it wasn't Randy's. I approached where the voice was coming from, and it belonged to a woman. She was full of blood, standing against a tree. I rushed to her aid, but I took a step back when I saw a knife in her hands. Without any difficulty, the woman stood up with the knife firmly in her hand and stared at me for the first time. She was crying, terrified, and full of blood. As soon as she looked at me, she told me that I shouldn't be there, that I should run. She doesn't want to do what she does, but has no choice. She told me that they made her do it. Scared, I realized what was going on. I asked the woman if the blood was hers, but in response, she lunged violently at me. But before she could stick the knife in me, I grabbed her arm and threw her. She hit a tree, and with a huge smile, she ran into the forest without losing sight of me. Did she run away? No, she just didn't want me to see her so she could attack me again when I was unprepared. I could hear the sound of the grass, of the plants. She was close by. I ran to my van, but on the way, I found something I didn't want to see. Randy's lifeless body was under a tree. I approached the corpse of my lifelong friend, and it threw me off. I heard a noise in the grass near me, and the woman rushed at me again with the knife in her hands. I managed to compose myself, and filled with anger and sadness for my friend, I grabbed her again and stopped her. We both struggled, but it was clear that I had the upper hand. I was about to pull the knife from her, but at that moment I realized that she was stronger than me. How could that be? This woman looked very weak, but at the same time, she had superhuman strength. The psychopath pulled the knife out of my hand and to the side. But instead of approaching me, she came to the corpse and started talking to it. Was she talking to my dead friend? I got up to see what was happening, and when I did, I almost threw up. The woman was kissing Randy's corpse while with her hand she kept stabbing him with the knife. The woman's kisses turned into bites. I turned around and ran as fast as I could. I got into my car, and as I started it, I called the police. Shortly after, the police contacted me to recognize my friend's body. The police arrived very quickly. They were nearby looking for Aurora, the woman who killed Randy and tried to kill me. And when they arrived, she was still with Randy's body. When I talked with the police and told them the whole story, they weren't surprised at all. Apparently, this was the way she used to act. That same night, there were reports that she was seen where I was camping with Randy. Since then, I never went camping again. Whether alone or with friends, that stage of my life was over. I had died along with my friend. Thank you so much for tuning in. Please be sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel, and we'll see you in the next one.